Hello everyone, welcome back to Coding Together. It's been a while. I had meant to give another project kickoff I had hoped to fit in another one in 2020, but didn't happen. Turns out there were more stuff to do at my work with my classes and my school than I had originally thought, so I'm sorry, but it is now 2021, so happy 2021, happy new year, and I'm excited to launch off this year with another project that hopefully you will also find kind of fun. So this is now episode 4. We've had, I wonder how many of you are watching, and thank you for those of you who are watching. Again, if you want to find previous episodes, you probably those of you who are watching have already seen all 3 episodes. But we started off the first 2 episodes with 2 different projects: a coding charades project or Pictionary, and a finger painting project. And then for the 3rd episode, it was really sharing the projects that you all have sent me. So today I want to give you another prompt and have you play with it, and hopefully you'll share your results with me too. So this one is actually inspired by a few different things. I have always loved things like pop-up cards. You know what those are? Like especially around the holidays when you get a lot of cards. Sometimes when you think about like what would be really delightful in a card. And, there are cards that like when you open it like plays music. My son has one that's actually kind of annoying. It plays Jingle Bell constantly. So I'm not going to show that to you here. But there are ones that like when you open, like a tree might pop up or like something like that. Actually, when I started thinking more about like how can we build a coding project around some idea of pop-up cards, I actually was more inspired by this book. So actually maybe I'll make my frame a little bit bigger. There we go, now you can see. So this is one of my and my son's favorite book called Press Here. Not sure you see this mirror, so if so, hopefully you can get the gist. It's just a plain old book. There's no fancy electronics or anything in it, but I'll read you the first few pages, so maybe you get the idea. So let's press here. So here we go. It says, ready? There's a yellow dot. Press here and turn the page. So you're supposed to, when you're reading it with a kid, press here. Oh, great. Now there's 2 dots. Press again. And there's 3 dots. And it keeps going through the book. There's sort of interactive stuff built in, but it's really clever the way they did it, which is through pages of a book. When I read this with my kid, I was like, oh my gosh, we could totally write code to do this. So that's what I was inspired by. So I'm going to call this the Press Here project. But the thing is, I will challenge you at the end is to create your own Press Here project, but maybe make something else surprising happen, right? So we'll start by just sort of duplicating or replicating what that book is trying to do, which actually will get us to learn about something called variables, because it's kind of helpful when you're trying to do something like this. And we'll get a little bit into how to build interactive stuff in P5. So hopefully you'll join me. Let's go. So open up your P5 and start a new project. So again, you log in. Make sure you log in or you can't save your projects. Then go File, New, and it should give you a new project. If it's been a while since you fired up P5, let me remind you that it already gives you some code. We haven't yet really explained what functions are. For now, I think we just know like we kind of need something called function setup, and we want to write our instructions for either the function setup, which is run once at the beginning when you press the play button, or function draw, which is the instructions that constantly repeat once you hit the play button, right? So whatever instructions we want to make sure that they're between the curly braces of either of the functions. So if I, for example, want something to happen only once at the start of when I hit the play button, I would put extra instruction here inside between the curly braces of function setup. Meaning, let me get my annotation. here's the opening curly brace, and here's the closing curly brace. So everything in between those two curly braces are considered part of the instructions for function setup. Okay, so if we were to write extra instructions, we would put here for running once. Similarly, if we want to run extra instructions to keep repeating, we would write it between the curly braces, the open and close curly braces of function draw. Hopefully one day, one of the episodes later, we will explain functions, because we can write our own functions, right? In very short terms, a function is essentially, I think I mentioned in one of the early episodes, it's kind of like a paragraph for us to organize our code. It's a little bit more than that, but for now we can treat it as that. But later on, we'll find out that you can actually do fancier stuff with functions than just thinking of it as a way to organize and make your code kind of neat. It's like putting stuff in boxes. Okay, so let's start by doing, like I said, I kind of want to do like a press here project. So I'm going to name this the press here project. And I'm going to start by drawing a yellow circle, because remember, I was inspired by this book, which has a yellow circle, right? So let's try doing that. So for you, you can feel free to follow along, but later on you might want to think about, like, you know, how do I want to design my press here project? So I'm going to draw fill, and again, fill takes a color, right? Which can either be one number if you want the color to be some sort of gray, or three numbers, a red color, a green color, or blue color if you want some mix of color. And it's kind of up to you to figure out what those numbers are, although I will teach you a trick. When we put in fill, like right now I'm just going to put in 100, 100, 100, which is distinctly not yellow. We will deal with that shortly. Sometimes I get questions from students like, what's the deal with the parentheses? That all has to do with sort of what we call the syntax of JavaScript. It's like the grammar, but it's essentially our way to say, like, hey, this fill command requires some inputs. And we tell it, like, here comes the input by saying, here are the round parentheses. So the stuff that you put between the round parentheses are the input to that command, right? Because otherwise, the computer's not going to know, like, okay, you want me to fill a shape with some color, but you need to tell me what color it is, because computers basically are do your bidding, but you have to be pretty specific on what you want it to do. So the trick I was going to teach you is that in Google, there is something called the color picker tool. That's actually kind of useful. So if you kind of go to yellow and you want to find a specific shade of yellow, like let's see, I want a really bright yellow. I move my color picker, and now I get the RGB color, and I can just copy that right over. So that's a little nicer if, like, you don't want to sit here and just tinker with the RGB numbers by yourself. I have mentioned that programming is about tinkering, but sometimes, like, this level of tinkering you may find annoying. So if you get annoyed, don't do it. Don't do it. Go to the color picker. So fill, and then we're going to do an ellipse. Reminder again, ellipse is a shape command. So it requires an X, Y, and then a width and a height. Right? I'm just typing these to remind you what the four numbers mean. We actually have to replace them with real numbers, because otherwise it will be like, what does X mean? Once we learn about variables, you could call those X and Y, but not right now. So let's say we want to put the ellipse right in the middle, and we want it to be kind of like, kind of big, but not too big. That's pretty good. I kind of don't like the outline, so I'm going to turn off the outline by saying there is no stroke. So stroke is what we call outline. So that's pretty good. I don't like the background being gray, because look, the book is white. So let's do this. So 255, right? Background is another command for setting color. When I give it one number, it gives it some sort of grayscale, and white is some sort of grayscale. If I want to be true to this book, I should probably also write the words press here, maybe, right? Because otherwise people won't know what to do. Or you can be really mysterious and not do that. This is a command we haven't talked about in any of the previous episodes. So in order to write text, You just have to use the text command, and the first thing you want to give it is what do you want to write. But you have to put that inside double quotes. In computer science speak, what we're defining, what we're giving it is a string. String is merely a string of letters, a string of characters. That's literally where the word string comes from. So I'm going to put press, and then you give it an X again and a Y. So let's say I want it sort of in the middle, and so maybe I start with 200, and then Y is I want to be above the circle, so maybe let's try 150. So it's like, okay, so small. So that's when we can now play with text size. So let's try 40. Is that way too big? That's not actually pretty good. I don't want it to be yellow. So let's go for a color picker. Maybe I want it to be kind of blue, which is what it looks like there. Fill there. Okay. And then I want to kind of scoot it maybe up and over a little bit. So again, this is where I play with the X. Remember on a third video, we talked about the coordinate system. And so to move something to like this way, we want to make it a little smaller, and to move it up, we want to make this a little smaller. Okay, it's not exactly lined up. That's there's a different way to do this, which is to change how text is aligned. So you can change text align to center, and then if now I say 200, it will actually use the center point of that text. So now you can get perfect alignment, which is great, right? And then maybe I want the press here to also be 200, but now below the yellow dot. There we go. Kind of better, right? Maybe a little lower. Okay, so now we've drawn out kind of our basic thing. Right now, nothing happens if I press there, but I kind of do want something to happen because this is the press here project, right? You can also think of it as like a pop-up cart project where I want to be able to give, when someone presses on the yellow dot, I want something surprising to happen. So in the book, the surprising thing that happens is another yellow dot comes up, right? And then later on, there's like more and more. This is a fun book if you don't have it. Even if you don't have children, or you are a child yourself, but who's like older, I think it's a fun book. Okay, so you press there, and then the yellow, and then you press again, you have another yellow, and then you press, and they start changing color, right? So we want to be able to tell when you've pressed here. How will we know how to do that? So thankfully, P5 was built for this kind of interactive project, so they make it really easy for us to know when someone's clicked the mouse. In fact, what we do is actually we create a new function. It's a special P5 function that it knows what to do. So it's called function mouseClicked. So we need to type the word function and then mouseClicked with a capital C, right? Then we have to have the round parentheses, which for now just seems silly. But later on when we talk about fancier ways to write functions, that will become more interesting. Right now, there's just nothing in between the round parentheses. And then just like with all other functions, we have an open curly brace and a closed curly brace. This is the function that P5 will look for when someone presses the mouse anywhere on your canvas. Okay, let me say that again. So whenever somebody presses the mouse anywhere on your project, on that canvas, P5 will say, huh, Angie just pushed on the mouse. Well, it doesn't know it's me. Somebody just pushed on the mouse. I'm going to go look into the code that I was given, look for a function called mouseClicked, and then see what instructions are in there, and I will do those instructions. Okay. So if in function mouseClicked, we say something like console.log. This is a good way sometimes for us to test if something is happening for real. Console.log just means print something down in this gray box. So mouse was clicked. You can tell I'm also not being very clean with these semicolons. I'm gonna go back and clean it up. Okay, so now when I press somewhere, anywhere, mouse was clicked, right? So now let's do something more interesting, which is we want maybe another dot to appear. So the first thing we might want to try is what if we just draw another ellipse? But maybe this time we move it to the left. So the x, maybe it's going to be 100, and then 200, and then maybe another 80 and 80. So think to yourself, oh, I forgot a comma. So I'm gonna give you a minute. Think to yourself if this will work, and actually try it, and then hit play before I do it in the video. Okay. It didn't work for me. So this has to do, again, with thinking about what is going on in this program. So let's talk through it. So what is going on in this program is when I hit the play button, this is called control flow, by the way, in fancy computer science speak. When I hit the play button, P5 will be like, okay, someone wanted me to start this project. I'm gonna look for something called a function setup and see what instructions was left for me there. So it looks for function setup and says, oh, okay, whoever wrote this code says they want me to create my canvas. Perfect, I'm gonna make my little canvas. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a function called draw and see what instructions were left for me there. And what I'm going to do is continuously do the instructions. So I'm going to set the background to white. I'm going to pick the yellow color. Remember that we're not doing an outline. Draw the circle. So draw a yellow circle. I'm going to draw this text. Press here. Then I'm going to reset the background to white. I'm going to draw the yellow circle. I'm going to draw the text. I'm going to set the background to white. I'm going to draw the yellow circle, and I'm going to, right, you get the idea. I'm not going to keep going. But so when someone clicks the mouse, all of that looping, all of that repeating is happening. When someone clicks the mouse, P5 will be like, okay, well now someone clicked the mouse. I'm going to look for the mouse click button or mouse click function and see what instructions were left there for me to do. And it says draw a new circle, which is great. It draws the circle, but immediately once it's done, it's going to go back to repeating the draw function. So even if that second circle is drawn, it's immediately erased because in your draw function, you start out by erasing everything by resetting the background. So even if that second yellow circle is drawn, it's just going to immediately erase it, right? So that's why it's not showing up. This is why we need something called a variable. Okay, so what is a variable? So I'm going to describe it to you how I describe it to my students, which is, what do you do when you need to remember something? So I'm going to make my bubble a little bigger so you can, because I'm going to do a little demo thing. I'm going to cover up the thing. So what do you do when you need to remember something? Oh, so maybe you write a note to yourself. I use a lot of post-it notes. So where's a good post-it note? Like, look at this random post-it note. I don't even know what those numbers mean anymore, but I wrote a note to myself. And I have like other ones. I don't, ta-da, right? Like random notes I leave for myself so I remember stuff. Maybe you do it in a notebook, right? Variables are sort of like that. Variables are ways for a computer program to leave little notes for itself so it can remember things. The things I remember can be like numbers. It can be string, right? Words or sentences. It could really be anything. But for today, we're just going to talk about maybe with numbers. Okay, so I think of variables like a little box that's going to hold some information. There's the name of the box. So let's say I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to call it show second circle. Okay, I have this little show second circle, and I'm going to name my little variable show second circle. There, that's the name of the variable. But what you put in the variable is not the same as this. So what you put in there could be a number. Let's say I'm going to put 0. Here's my variable. I put 0 in there. Okay, so that's now my way to remember stuff. So later on I'll be like, hey, should I show second circle? I don't know. Let me look. Oh, 0. No, I shouldn't. But maybe if it says 1, then I should show it. Right? So this whole concept of variables being a holder, a container, a way to remember stuff is going to be really important because variables is kind of like a big concept in computer science. a lot of times when you're trying to write code for something, a lot of it will involve creating new variables to hold stuff, hold what we call data, right? In this case, data is pretty simple. It's like, hey, should I show that second yellow circle or should I not show that second yellow circle? So then the other thing to remember is there's what's called the name of the variable and there's what's called the value of the variable. The value of a variable can change easily, right? I can just like make a new note. And I can be like, okay, instead of put 0, I'm gonna put 1. Then later when I say, hey, can you tell me what this variable's value is? I can just look it up, right? I can ask, hey, what is the variable? What is the value of this? Ta-da, right? So if that imagery was helpful, keep thinking about that imagery. If you come up with other metaphors, feel free to share it with me. I'm always looking for new metaphors. So, you're gonna make me small again. So we're actually gonna use a variable to try to keep track of whether we should be showing that second circle. When I teach variables, I always talk about Angi's 3 rules of variabling. Not an actual word, it's my word. But so I'm gonna put these in comments. The first is you need to create and give an initial, like a starting value to a variable. The second thing you have to do is figure out where to use it. And then the third thing is figure out where to change it. The word variable means something that varies. If a variable never changes values, it's not being a very good variable. Right? So we want to make sure that we not only use it, but that's somewhere it changes it. If you never change it, it's something, there's a different concept, kind of call it constant. But for our purposes today, we're going to have to think about where to change this variable. So let's start. So in JavaScript, the way you create a variable, there's 2 ways. I'm just going to do the simple way, which is use the keyword var. Var for variable, right? And I'm literally going to call it what I call my box, show second circle. Okay, so I've told JavaScript I'm creating a new variable using var. Then I've named it show second circle. And now I need to give it a value to start. So let's say 0. And we can remind ourselves that 0 means don't show and 1 means show, right? So basically what I've done is I've made a box, I've named it, and I've put the value 0 inside the box. So now I don't have to remember it. I have really bad memory. So now I don't need to remember it because I can just always ask what is the value inside this box. Okay, so we've done the step 1. Step 2 is we want to use it somehow, right? So to use it, we can make use of the function draw. So we could say if show second circle is 1, okay, well, if it's 0, don't do anything. No extra stuff needed because we've already drawn our regular circle, right? We can do fancy stuff later. So what did we just do right here? This if, it's called an if statement. Fancy term is conditionals. But really it's just as if like in regular English, you say, if this happens, then this thing, right? If the light turns red, I should stop the car. If it's dinner time, then feed the dog and yourself, but feed the dog. If it's the holidays, bake cookies, right? I think hopefully you're familiar with this idea of and then asking a question, what is this thing true, then what happens? So in programming, there's also this way to specify what happens. Again, it's all about giving instructions. In this case, you're saying, I only want these instructions to happen if something is true, right? Like, I don't want it to always happen. I only want it to happen sometimes. And so the if statement is for us to tell it, like, when is that sometimes? So in this case is if whatever I've stored in my variable is equal to 0. Right now, we're not going to do any extra stuff. Then you can also say else meaning if whatever I said that thing is not true. So every other case, so otherwise or else. Then maybe I want to show that second circle. So oops, ellipse, 100, 200, 80, 80. And I probably want to make sure the fill and stroke matches that yellow circle. Okay, so we've done step 1 of variabling. We've done step 2 of variabling. Now we have to figure out step 3. When do we want to change it, right? We have this handy dandy function called mouseClicked, which is what happens when someone clicks the mouse over here. So instead of trying to draw that second circle, which gets erased right away, maybe we just try to change what's in here, right? So when someone clicks the mouse, I should be like, oh wait, I do want to show the second circle because someone's clicked the mouse. So I'm just going to replace what's in my variable with a 1. So you just take that, I should show second circle equals 1. So now, let's walk through what should happen. We start off with my variable having the value 0. Store it. Then I hit play. This is what happens. Create the canvas, clear the background, draw your yellow circle, show your press here text. But now you have this extra thing. And it says, hey, tell me what's still being stored in here. If it's 0, oh, it's 0. Okay, cool. I just checked it. It's 0. Do nothing. Okay, great. Repeat. Clear background. Draw yellow circle. Draw press here. What's going on here? Oh, it's still 0. Okay, do nothing. Then someone clicks the mouse, and P5 is like, I'm going to look for this function mouseClicked. Okay, but in function mouseClicked, the instruction that was left for me is, hey, take that variable and now put a 1 in there instead of the 0. And apparently Angie's hair, gross. Okay, 1. So now next time through the draw loop, clear the background, draw your yellow circle, draw your press here. Hey, what's the value of show second circle? Oh no, it's 1, even if it's upside down. 1. Oh, it's 1. It's no longer 0. So we're now going to do this thing, which is draw a second circle. So let's see if that works. So I'm going to hit play. I'm going to press here. It worked. The variable, our little box, simple as it is, helped us do what we wanted. There's probably a few other questions you have, but I think this is enough to get you started. In the follow-up video, I can probably answer some of the questions. I don't want this to go on forever. Like, how do you make sure that someone only pressed inside, right? But the challenge I have for you is to create your own press here project. But make sure you do something different. You can start with this press here, like kind of inspired by this book, but maybe when someone clicks the mouse, something different shows up. Maybe it's not a second yellow circle. What can you make show up, given what you've learned? You've learned a bunch. You've learned how to draw different shapes. You've learned how to draw curves. Some of you who have more experience probably can look up different things to happen. But that's the next project, the Press Here project. And please, leave a comment. If you're watching this on Instagram, leave me a comment there. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment there. Or if you want to leave no trace, send me an email at codingtogetheryay@gmail.com to share your project so I could share it with everybody else. Until next time, bye.